Glad you could join for another installment of our Securing Success. Today, I actually got to have someone with me that I've known for a while, and he gives me crap all the time. And he knows he can get away with it. But he's a peer of mine, and we met several years back. His name's Charles Henson. Charles, thanks for coming on board, buddy.
Yeah, Wayne, glad to be here, man.
What we're going to talk about today here is we're going to talk. We just announced at DattoCon about 2 weeks ago, and we did a soft launch of it about a month before that. Those that know about us, that we do a lot of stuff around compliance, and we do compliance for banks and finance and various other industries and stuff. And as doing that and getting known for doing that, I started having a lot of MSPs coming to us that had got into it, but was looking for something that for a program that would really help with that, because tools and stuff does part of the work, but most of the work is people and having to stay up with all the changes. And I kept getting asked about it, so we decided to put a program together called Compliance Ready Program for MSPs. And basically what it is we provide a compliance program, become the compliance department for the MSP, so they can focus on what they do best, and we do the compliance side of it. And we're finding that this is turning out quite well. We did an announcement to a standing room only of about in DattoCon, and partners are signing up. But Charles was one of the first. He talked to me for about a year, watching what I was doing, and Charles just correct me if I'm wrong, but for about a year as I'm going through and building this program, and he kept talking to me about it and stuff like this, and come up to one day and said, "Hey, let's go do this." And probably that was the wildest day. So he introduced me to his team. His right-hand man is bigger than I am, and I'm not a small individual. And when Charles introduced me, he bear hugged me, going, "Thank you." I thought that's different.
Yep.
But what we're going to talk about here a little bit now, Charles, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you've been doing, where you're around, and we'll get into what we're talking about today.
Sure. Yeah, I'm Charles Henson, Nashville computer, based here in Nashville, but I've got offices in Georgia as well as Michigan. And we've been in business since 1988. So we've been around for a long time. And we've taken a security first approach. And security is not optional when we go out and meet with new prospects and we meet with our clients. All of our clients have our full security stack. And if somebody says, "Hey, we don't want all these things," then we just walk away. All money's not equal, especially when there's risk and litigation that can take place there. And so with that, what we've started doing is looking at, our clients are asking about compliance. We're looking at compliance. I started reading a lot around the FTC safeguards because we work with CPA firms. Had an individual that worked for me and was running down the compliance path, and then he got another job opportunity, went off somewhere else, and so I brought somebody else in, and they started looking at it and doing the security side of things, and they weren't interested in doing it either. So then I brought in another person. That person was not doing any better, having to learn everything. And she was like, "Well, this is more sales stuff, and I'm not in sales." And I'm like, "Well, I've already sold it." So I sold compliance to about 3 clients, and then the issue that I had was, and I kept going to Wayne, going, how are you going to when are you going to get this thing spun up? Because I've got clients that are ready to pay, and I've got people that trying to use AI to write policies, and they don't know what they're doing, so they're hoping AI can write it properly. And I'm like, okay, this is not what I need to be selling. I need to be having somebody that can have my back and focus on the compliance piece while we continue to focus on the security piece and the controls, and showing those controls that are actually in place for our clients. And so that's kind of been our journey. Is we started down the compliance path, and we're like, man, there's a lot of thorns and brush, and it's hard to pursue this and go through it. And my navigators that were navigating me down that path kept leaving, and so I've just decided to back out of that path and take the path that I know, which is security, and then bring in the experts from Avtech and say, "Hey, can you take care of this for my clients, and let us work hand in hand while we're on this journey?"
I appreciate that. So what we're going to do is I was go through some slides here, just kind of for folks joining and trying to understand exactly what we're talking about. And what the focus of this is, that MSPs are really good at what they do. And just like Charles, they're really good at doing the IT and coming in and doing the security and all that. Compliance takes another realm. And the biggest thing we see people get in trouble is when you try to do compliance and IT with the same people. I come out of the finance world, banking, highly regulatory, and even in banks, a lot of the banks get in trouble, and that's when they get hit is because they try to do this with the same resources. And it turns out we have a hard enough time getting IT guys just to fill in their notes on tickets when they fix something, much less trying to do documentation and compliance. It's a different breed. So what we decided to do was build an organization that is a complete separate department with a BCISO that's leading it. And all those resources are types of folks that love analysis, documentation, dotting I's, crossing the T's, because that's what compliance is. It's the documentation side of everything that you're doing and validating. And the big thing is most people go in and create a policy, do it, and just take a template, do it, but it doesn't match up to what they're actually doing. And they make it too hard. So what we was focusing on is trying to go through this. So what we want to do, compliance crisis is real and it's actually going down market. It's always been like where I've been at the banking side of it. But because of how cyber has actually impacted everyone, it's affecting everyone in the market, all the way down to the sole proprietor CPA. And going through that education, what we realized was everybody's focused on their business. They don't realize the massive amount of content that comes out that's affecting their business every day. Just like states are coming out with safe harbor laws. Texas come out with the Senate Bill 2610. It talks and lays out for small business below 250 employees and lays out 3 layers. And if you get hacked, if you go into court and prove what you're doing, then you're exempt from penalties from lawsuits. But if you can't, then you're not exempt. And I think you was just mentioning a minute ago when we was talking in backstage, Charles, that you had just heard that someone in Tennessee was talking about some new laws and stuff.
Yeah, Governor Bill was talking about it at a breakfast I went to about a month ago. And it's a brand new law. I need to check and see if it's a safe harbor law, but I know it is around having security, cybersecurity posture in place for your business.
Right.
And so I'm going to do a deeper dive on that and find out exactly what that's about and if it is the safe harbor laws.
Now that's one of the things about coming out, all that stuff coming out there. And if you're not really focused on it, it's hard to keep up with it all, right? And so that's what our team's going to be doing, updating Charles' team about new stuff coming out, researching that. And for those there, I mean, there are states like Ohio, Iowa, Connecticut, Utah, now it's Texas that got very specific bills that they passed. I think Ohio was the first in 2018 to actually say safe harbor. But there's other states that have it. They might not, the names of it are kind of obscure. So they're not necessarily really one you just go type in, go find, but there are others that have very similar things there. So in this compliance crisis that's going on, is really driving down market, is they have to be in place. And cybersecurity insurance is one that's really tying it into CIS framework right off the bat. So these are things you got to be aware of. And so we started really looking at this, how do we go do this? So from a client, and this is, Charles, you go have a good story here, but clients are struggling. Clients are so focused on what they're trying to do. And that's the same thing for the MSP. You have a business that you're trying to do and go do this, but all of the things that you're exposed to, how does it relate and go into this is time consuming. And we got clients. I mean, Charles, you got a client that they want to be compliant, but
Yeah,
it's so daunting and all that. That's kind of what led us to get together on that, right?
yeah, it is. They actually 3 years ago signed on with another company to work on their compliance, and it's the way the company was handling it. It was more like an audit because they gave them deadlines. You have to have these documents done, and I think they assigned like 187 different documents to them all at once, and nothing was spoon fed to them. It was just like a bulldozer came through their office and a pile of paperwork showed up and they're like, okay, you have until this date to get this done and review these. They don't know anything about compliance. They don't know anything about the controls. They don't know what they're reading in most of these things. And then they're asking, well, what information is that? And then the company that they work with would literally go and reread the same article instead of explaining in English what that is. They would just go reread what the client was asking about, you know, based on what's in the compliance journal. And it's like, well, how are we supposed to know how to answer this if the person helping us can't answer it? So they've been, just trudging through this and waiting uh, for the day that they can, get out of that agreement with this company, because it's just been a horrible nightmare for them and has created so much extra work that they have no idea what they're doing. And to be honest with you, I don't think they're very much more compliant than they were when they originally started. And even if they were, I don't think they know, uh, what's actually in place, like the policies that are there.
Yeah. And when we started researching, that's what we was finding, that a lot of folks wouldn't do the compliance because there was nothing to guide them, because there's always the auditing piece. Your corporate world, you got a compliance department. They go off and do all this work, get ready for it. And then the auditor comes in and says, show me your evidence, show me all this based on the control. But even in that scenario, even the environments I come from, we still have to explain the controls, even though they've been doing it for years and years and years. So those that's never been exposed to it, that created a real problem. So when I started looking at it, it was actually one of my banks that asked me to start looking into this. How could we simplify this and go do this? And that's where we developed the READY program. And so we do compliance readiness. What does that mean? Let's simplify it. Yes, you got all these controls you got to go meet, but a lot of these controls are duplicate. And so one set of evidence, one policy could cover multiple controls. And instead of writing a document for each separate control, which is kind of what you went through, that client went through, and coming in and it complicated it. You didn't know how to associate it. And also from your team, which I gathered was, okay, how's that tie back to the standard operating procedure you guys are following? Because the MSP is in the middle of all this. You got to understand, how does this apply to you as well? And there seems like that was also a gap there, was, okay, what do I need to comply to? What do I need to make sure? What is actually what's responsible for the client and what's responsible here? So when we drove down that, saying, okay, we need to provide people that can come in and we'll help write the policy, not say, here's a control, go write it, and then coming back and say, oh, no, that's not right. Do this control. We interpret the controls to the visit, write the policy. We still got to have the client bless it off. They got to read it and they got to understand it. That's part of the compliance, because you got to live the compliance. You got to make sure it matches up to what the MSP is providing and what their team's providing. And so that's closing that gap and making it more of a simple language is what the intent of what we started building this off of. And I think that's what we're finding with most everybody is, how do I do this? Do I have to apply all of this and come into it? So that was a big focus there. And what we're also finding is we're starting to get asked a lot more about, this is strategic, not just something I have to check a box. What we mean by that is, now I get asked every day, what are you doing? How are you compliant with the standards and all this, bringing a client on? Being in the banking, I get asked that all the time. So I'm used to it. But what we're starting to find is, because of the vendor supply chain, and you can speak to it as well, is that if you're not doing some type of compliance, your competitive advantage could be hurt by that. And that's what we mean about the boardroom reality of this. How are you seeing this affect you and as an MSP going out with clients today, Charles?
What's that now?
How are you seeing this affect you from being able to do business and sign on new business, them asking you about where you sit compliance wise?
Yeah, we're starting to get people to ask us, like, are you compliant? What do you have? What regulations do you have around you? And what we're doing is we're following along with like the cybersecurity insurability type of
Right.
stuff. I'm not gone. I haven't gone down the NIST or the high trust roads because I haven't needed to. But we did have one prospect. I guess it was about 3 years ago now. They asked us if we would be SOC 2 Type 2 compliant, and looking at that and looking at what they were going to pay us every month, I was not going to be able to afford going through that, hiring a company to come in, because it's obviously something we can't do. And, so we ended up ultimately not being able to do business with them. Now, it wasn't a very large client, but that was the one time that I ran into it where they wanted that specific type of compliance. And I know other MSPs that I've coached and talked to, one in particular in Chicago, they have the high trust certification, but the businesses that they deal with are enterprise level businesses, and they need that validation to ensure that their MSP is running with those controls in place. And so for us, the smaller businesses aren't demanding it, but I have had clients asking me. I have one that's asked, hey, we may need help with CMMC. Is that something you guys are doing as well? Because you're my MSP. And so it's definitely starting to we're having those conversations around that compliance.
That's where I see with a lot of what's going on is as we progress as MSPs, this is going to become more relevant because it's being pushed to the clients, whether it's state level, federal level, industry level, it's being pushed down. And I think for everybody, if you know, following the cybersecurity insurance is the base, as far as I'm concerned, of what everybody should do because it's a subset of CIS. That's what cybersecurity insurance is based on, is your CIS. So if you're following CIS and getting yourself in that play, I think that really positions you to be in a good position to help clients when they come in. You saw it, you got that evidence to be able to provide there. You're in a good standing there. But it's steadily getting more and more discussed in every boardroom we're dealing. So what we look at here is how does this affect the MSP? And we always talked about, I equate it back to being reactive, proactive. We use break fix, but we get in there and actually get it proactive and doing the managed services to make sure we reduce the amount of problems is what's going into this. Well, this is another one of those modes where being in compliant, understand what's going on and how that helps tweak what you're doing from a cybersecurity standpoint, documentation standpoint, actually keeps you proactive in what you need to do. Because as compliance things change, take cybersecurity insurance, for example. What, 2 years ago, we really started getting into that really hard, right?
Uh-huh.
Well, it had a base 8 or 9 things you go actually put out there. Well, this year, now, if you go look at cybersecurity insurance, now they add the requirements for having a SIM. That didn't exist before.
Right.
And so it's always doing that. So understanding what that compliance can actually make you proactive of what services you need to supply out. How's that affected what you do in going out there? Because you started doing this whole compliance thing. How did it change how you approach your customers with the stack that you have, the services you do for them from the cybersecurity standpoint, as well as the help desk standpoint?
Well, talking to our attorneys and, having different things that were added to our MCA, uh, having had issues with, and my attorney had worked on a couple of different cases where MSPs had gotten into a lawsuit and they were being sued by their client because of negligence or not having all the tools in place. Between talking to them, our errors and omissions slash cybersecurity broker, understanding where our risks were, it's really, if we're not offering this, then we need to be offering these services. And what we did, you talk about 2 years ago with cyber insurance, one of the things that we did was, if a client had something that they declined, say it was the Palo Alto firewall, then we would put declined in red and have them initial it. Well, my attorney was like, well, that's pretty, it's neat, but it probably not going to stand up if you get sued,
Right.
because the client declined it, but you shouldn't have even done business with them because they don't have the right tools in place, and so you're not protecting them. And so that's when we really started looking at our security stack, and we said, we can only put so many. And this, I get this from Blockworks. Rob Bowles always says you can only wear so many jackets in the winter.
Yep.
All right, then you can't move. So you have to look strategically at what right tool sets are there, which tools work really well together, and which ones can kind of look for things that others aren't looking at. And then we just looked at it and said, okay, well, here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to do it. And dark web monitoring used to be optional. People could buy it. Now it's part of it. Training used to be optional. It's part of it. If you come on board as a client, you're going to have those sets of security things that's added to your systems. And, I mean, we really pushed the Palo Alto networks firewalls because of their reporting and what they can do. Now, if they are not under some type of a compliance, then we may back down to, like a Sophos firewall. But at the end of the day, we still want that looked at, monitored, updated, and that full security stack has to be in place. And so, utilizing the tools that we have, we do have access to that SIM, and it is being monitored by a SOC because I don't have the resources. I don't want to hire the resources to come in here and build out a SOC and have that 24/7 and have 24/7 employees. I want to outsource that to a security center that can actually perform those duties and help isolate those machines when my guys aren't here.
Mm-hmm. And all that, the part of that is very important for the MSPs to understand is, I do the same thing. Hey, it's not a question. This is included because there's shared responsibility, shared liability. And that's the thing the MSP's got to understand and how compliance is affecting them. Yeah, the customer's got a compliance requirement to meet. If we're not, as soon as we sign a contract with them, we're inheriting that same compliance requirement. And if we're ignoring it, all we're doing is putting ourselves in jeopardy. And there's precedents out there, lawsuits out there for that. So the best thing we can do is make sure we guide them. Is some, I got the old saying is you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, right? If the client doesn't want to drink that, that's fine. They can go somewhere else. But what we have to do is guide them the right way, then show them how we're protecting them and how it's relevant to them in their industry and that. And that's where the compliance side of it, where we're looking at it, is enable the MSPs to actually present in a way that it makes sense to the client. This is meeting things that they have to do, not because we're telling them, but because their industry is demanding it and coming into it. And it protects them, their clients, and their employees. So that's the important piece there. So we look at it. Yeah, go ahead, Charles.
I promise if they went and talked to their attorney or their cyber liability policy holders, they would be telling them the same things. And, really what these clients need to be doing is realizing when they go through that checklist for their cyber liability, they're not just sending that to the MSP. And if the MSP is just going through that checklist, then you really need to look at what is in the conditions section of that cyber liability policy.
Yes.
Because that's what we need to be protecting our clients is looking at those conditions, because it says, here's what we're going to do to protect the client and their data and their client's data. And so make sure that you're not just checking a box saying, yes, we have this in place. If you say you have multi-factor, put multi-factor in place. If you say you have a guest Wi-Fi, then make sure that they have a guest Wi-Fi and nobody's cell phone is connected to it.
Mm-hmm. And the documentation, that's where it comes into place of it, is where a lot of folks, they have this stuff in place, but it's just not documented. And that's the compliance side of it. Bring that documentation, tie it up to the policy. So the first thing I go ask is, what's your conditional access policy? What's your acceptable use policy? What's your security policy? These are all basic things that every company should have in place, because it dictates how things happen in their environment, and you educate those users on it. Same way you do with SAT training. It's no different. And this sounds like it's a big mountain to climb, and it can be, but that's exactly what we're trying to do, is make sure that it's not a huge mountain to climb, but it has a lot of advantages to it. So then I get asked a lot of times, well, how does this journey start and where you come into this and go into this? It's no different than the same thing we do. Is first, educating the clients, looking at it, what should they meet? Let's just don't blanket say, hey, go do this, but what do they need to meet? Because there's things you can have all these controls, but all those controls might not have to be met. They can be waived, but you have evidence to prove it. But that's what you do in this. And so we first get in there, really simplify it down to what they need to go off and do and be able to portray that out there, and then make sure assessments. You have tools that's going to be there that we're going to actually take feed from. If you don't have tools, we're providing tools as the whole program here and coming into it to where it really is. And the tools we put in place is actually going to help the actual MSP. We create the documentation, do this. Our team will actually create the documentation, review it, and then the client can sign it off. There'll also be stuff that the MSP needs to go off and sign off on because it's affecting both. But our team's creating it, educating you on it, bringing it there, make sure it's right, and go do that. Auditors come in. If you do have auditors, we're going to sit with the auditors. We're going to be, if you don't have a CISO, you don't have a compliance officer, we become your virtual. It's automatically part of the problem. And then what we're doing is helping you actually grow what you do. So how does this work? Is we actually have no administrative access at all. The MSPs team deploys all our tools. And then we're collaborating. All the remediation that we got to go do, we're going to feed that back to you. But instead of saying, hey, here's a problem, which you've seen before, Charles, is, hey, this is broke. What do you do with that? You can't. So what we're doing is our analysts are looking at it and saying, okay, yeah, this is a problem. Here's the recommended fixes. And then we're bringing that to the MSP. So you know exactly what's broke, recommended fixes. You go do that. You provide that evidence back and we validate it. And so he's coming in here. So what is it going to do? Not only it helps you be more secure from your standpoint, but also when things are not there, that's the upsell side of it. That's where you can actually go and add to your stack, add to the capabilities of what you're doing there, and it's all justified in what you're doing. How does your team perceive this in what we're doing together, Charles?
Well, one of the things that I'd like to add on to that is like we work with a SOC. Some of the controls are based off of what they put into place.
That's
And
right.
so it's not even my team coming back and saying, here's proof of controls. We're working with the SOC to say we need proof of the controls. And if we have, data loss protection enabled and we say that, and then we find out on one of the firewalls we don't, it keeps that checks and balances and ensures that we have that safety net there that somebody else is also following along looking at this. And so it's an added advantage to have that. And then, for our guys, just showing proof that we have these things is the easy part. And it validates that we didn't, as humans, make a mistake for our clients. And, we're constantly doing audits. We're making sure that every device has every tool every single month. We run through those audits, and this takes it a step further and validates that not just the software is installed on those devices, but the actual controls are in place.
And that's the whole intent. What I love about that statement is this is a team effort. It's not he, they, or whatever. It's a whole team effort to take in that client. And that's how we're bringing this together is we're not just a separate company going to do this. We're part of your team. And it can be done. Now you'll get involved is where you got some clients where, hey, we'll be able to, if one team go in, but then you own the customer. Even though they know who we are, that's how we're operating. So it solves both the problems when it comes in as having that third party validation.
Well, it's given me peace of mind knowing that my client is on their compliance journey, not feeling like they're getting bulldozed into a mountain of paperwork, and we're being relied upon to make sure that those controls are in place. So it's a win-win for me because my client's going to be happy because they're on this compliance journey with somebody that actually knows what they're doing, and my team's going to be happy because they're not going to be the ones also reviewing the policies, helping to create the policies. They're just the ones that provide the proof of what we are actually securing.
Which is the whole intent of being ready. So that's perfect. So how are we looking at this is today we got cybersecurity insurance requirements coming. There's other industries in the near future, AI driven audits. Well, AI is also bringing another chapter to it is because with the induction of AI and how fast it's being deployed within environments, and some say, well, it's fast in some, but others are holding up. Well, it's faster than what you think. People are using AI tools. You never know what's going on there. And how does that violate things? And there is reference models for AI. That's the other thing that we want to make sure of is how we go do this and collaborate together to do those things. And then tomorrow, there's going to be a larger demand. As I talked about earlier, is it's coming down market and we're starting to get asked. I've got a sole proprietor CPA that comes to me and says, I want a WISP, but I understand it takes more than just the plan. There's also an information security program that you got to deploy things this is tied to. Those are things even the small shops are starting to educate themselves on. And they understand if they don't do this, and this is one of the things, Charles, I explained to you, in the CPAs, they got to have a P10, right? It's the payer tax identification number, right?
Yep.
Question number 11. When they check that, it says you're compliant with IRS 4557. They check it. That means not only do they have a WISP, but they actually got the information security program, the tools, the security tools, the ongoing monitoring, all that stuff tied to the policy. That one right there has been around for a long time. And there's a lot of them don't realize that by checking that, if they don't have it in place, they've actually got themselves in jeopardy. I mean, you started finding that yourself talking to a lot of the CPAs that you were talking to. So we're seeing this from your side, doing what you've been doing. How much do you see it in the market coming in, that compliance, and how fast is it coming, being adopted? Is it coming down market to SMB from what you've seen so far?
Well, I think it's coming as fast probably as AI. AI is
Agreed.
coming really fast. We're seeing a lot of changes and a lot of new videos and things of that nature. What we're starting to see is the FTC safeguards came into place, well over a year ago,
Mm-hmm.
and most people didn't even know what that was. I wrote a book on it, and I did a couple of 100-minute CPE accredited classes on it. My attorney called me and he's like, "How did you even know about this?" And I said, "Well, I work with CPAs and I wanted to get in front of this thing." And when they pushed the deadline back or forward and said, you got a little bit more time, what I started noticing is in the CPA journals is they're starting to write more about this. They're starting to bring it up to the surface a little bit more. One of the things that we're looking to do is we're doing a conference here in Nashville, AICPA, and then in a couple of weeks we'll be in DC at that conference as well. Our goal is to go out and educate as many CPAs as possible, because I mean, I've got, single CPAs that are calling me saying, "Hey, I need to be compliant and I need your help on this." And the word is getting out. It's starting to spread. And really what's going to happen is you're going to take one or two case scenarios where a CPA gets busted, where they get an incident and the FTC steps in and gives them a fine. And what I really like about this over like the HIPAA compliance for healthcare is it was a nice to have. You need to be HIPAA compliant. But if you're not, when community health systems got hacked by the Chinese government, how many millions of people's data was compromised, and what did HIPAA do? Nothing. Well, what's the FTC going to do? Well, they're going to come in, they're going to assess your security posture. What have you done? If it's gross negligence, you can get up to 5 years in prison. But if have at least tried, and I think that's where the safe harbors are coming in by states, then the reason the safe harbors are being written now is because companies are starting to focus on, how do I get compliant? How do I look at my security posture and make sure that I am protecting my patient data or my client data and their tax information, their 1099s and their social securities. And so really, when you look at that, healthcare HIPAA was around for a long time. It's still there. People are still going through those HIPAA assessments. But when it comes to like the FTC safeguards and even CMMC, now companies are starting to stand up and go, okay, we need to pay attention to this, because it's not just being talked about anymore. And really what I love about it, Wayne, is it's not me telling them. I've been talking about for
Yep.
years, you need to be compliant. Now I'm telling them, hey, the government is mandating that you're compliant. Used to, you could wear your seatbelt if you chose to. And if
Mhm.
you saw a cop, you could then swing it on. Right. Today you get in your car and you don't even think about it. You just buckle up and you go,
Yep.
because you are compliant. You're complying with the laws that have been made and mandated and pushed down our throats for years. And that's where we are today, is the government starting to push this down our throats and say, guys, you have to secure your firm. You have to secure your business. You have to have compliance in place.
Well, if you think of it, it's a great analogy. I love the analogy of the seatbelt is you automatically throw it on because we see time and time and time, it's proven that if I have that seatbelt, how many lives did it save versus if I
Yeah,
didn't, right? It's
absolutely.
no different. It's the old analogy, hey, I walk up, there's two doors. There's one wide open, there's the other one's got bars on it, says beware of dog. Which one you gonna walk in,
Hmm.
right? say,
Absolutely.
coming into it.
Yeah.
So this is continuing on. And for us coming into doing this and advising these folks, if we're able to go do this, we're leading the way and helping them be compliant for what they're doing, which helps everybody. So how do how does folks transform? How do you get ready to do this? Reach out to us. Just have a conversation. Whether you don't know whether what you're going to do here or whatever, we can reach out to us. Come to my website. Um, you can also get me on LinkedIn. Hit me up on LinkedIn, and we'd be happy to have that discussion with you. Charles and I have worked together for a while now and always enjoy it. And I like getting him on. Your journey will be a good one with this. You should be doing it. If you are, keep it up. If not, give us a call. We'd be
Well,
glad to have
Wayne,
you. Charles?
Wayne, I just want to say this:
Okay.
MSPs don't need to go out and sell compliance. You step in there, you meet with the client, you do the whole pitch. I mean, it's nothing. It's hands off for me. All I have to do is do the introduction. You come in, you do the presentation, you close the client, and then when you need us to show those controls, then we're working on the back end to do that with your team. And that's one of the things that I love about working with Avtech is that I don't have to go out and sell compliance and then call Wayne and say, "Hey, here's what I did." And David on the back end's going, "What in the heck did he tell them?" Right? And so, you know, so it's great for the MSP to call you guys, get on your schedule, coordinate it with your client, and then if the client has questions, you're their trusted advisor. You're on the call with them, but you're bringing another trusted partner to the table that can take them along on this compliance journey.
I appreciate that, Charles. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what our intent is, to be part of your team, to go do this and be the experts for you
Yeah.
and drive what you do with your client. So the whole thing is trusted through you, your client, and you know what we'll be able to do. So appreciate it, Charles. I'm sure I'll see you again soon.
Yes,
And
sir.
for everybody out there, y'all have a great day, and we'll see you next time.
All right.